Yeah, I did it again. I twacked something in my lower back. I did it yesterday. When we were filming the video on the satellite yesterday, at the end of it, I says, tomorrow we'll work on it, or maybe the next day. And the reason I said that was because right before we shot that, I was moving stuff around in my shed. I was digging out a pair of drums, brake drums. And I bent just the wrong way, and I felt something on my back go, like that. And this is an ongoing thing. I heard it a couple of months ago. And just as it all gets back to normal, it's like I aggravated it again. So today I'm not bending over the fender of that car. I'm not doing anything except just taking it easy. And I figured, let's do a video. Let's cover a topic that I've never ever seen anybody cover, and I've never covered it myself, but it's something I should have, probably a long time ago. So this is different. This is way out of the box. But this is how you can make money in drag racing without ever actually being competitive or winning. I know that sounds like out there, but it's something I actually have personal experience with, and I'm going to give you two examples. I'm going to give you one, a historic example, it's pretty much a household name, and second, a current example, somebody who's currently out there right now doing it, and doing it as in grand style. So, the unique thing about drag racing, the world of drag racing and hot rods and all that, is that it gives you a lot of opportunities, especially if you think out of the box. It gives you a lot of opportunities to capitalize on the world of hot rods, drag racing. And there are thousands of examples of this. Exhibition cars and whatnot, jet cars, wheelie cars, all sorts of different funny cars and whatnot over the years. But this is something I actually have some personal experience with. So going back to the 1990s, I was partners on a Top Fuel dragster for a couple of years, and we were hopelessly uncompetitive. Like, this was a true backyard, and I mean literally a true backyard operation. We ran on no money. It was all borrowed parts, used parts, just whatever we could like, sneak away from the dinner table. That's the money that went into the car. It was terrible. But the car was able to pay for itself, and it paid for itself through match racing. So if you're not familiar, okay, you know what grudge racing is. Match racing is a little bit different. Match racing is something that was very popular in the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s. And I was involved in the match race scene towards the end of it. So what a match race was a track would book in a certain type of car. Usually back in those days it was fuel funny cars, and sometimes Top Fuel dragsters, sometimes pro stockers. But the idea is they would book in 4, 8, 16, however many cars it was. And they would pay these cars appearance money. It didn't matter how fast you went. It didn't matter if you won or lost. All you had to do was get there and get down the track. That was it, and you got paid. Typically, the way it worked was if you were on the match race trail, if you were running these tracks, and they would be like circuits, or like localized circuits. So we ran up in the Northeast, well, a lot, which was Englishtown, Atco, Maple Grove, New England Dragway, a whole circuit. The tracks within a few 100-mile radius of each other. And during the season, they would book in these shows. So if you were on the match race circuit, typically what would happen was you'd run match races, you'd make money off the match races, and then you would take whatever you learned from running the car, because every run is an opportunity to learn. You take whatever you learned from running the car, and whatever extra money there was, and then you would go to a national event, and then you would try to qualify for a national event. So for us, it was the IHRA events. We followed the IHRA trail. So we would run match races, get money together by running the match races, and then go and spend it all trying to qualify at a national event. And this was the typical thing in the day. So one of the situations that we ran across was that we were based in New York City, and Englishtown was our home track. So Englishtown, Atco, the local tracks would book in certain cars, let's say for a smaller match race, and 2-car or 4-car match race. And they always needed somebody to fill in, to be in the other lane. So often, well, okay, one example was Shirley Muldowney. They would book in Shirley Muldowney because she was the name. And if they advertised on the radio and the TV that they had Shirley Muldowney, they would get 15,000 people in the stands, paying good money. So they would pay her $8,000, $10,000 to come and make 2 runs. They needed somebody to put in the other lane, so we would often get that call. Hey, we got a match race at Shirley Muldowney, Atco, and then the date and so on and so forth, and we would get paid like $3,000. It cost us, and this is back in the 90s. It cost us $1,000 a run. So every run, it cost us $1,000 between fuel, oil, plugs, clutch wear, tire wear. If you amortize all of the costs, about $1,000 a run. We'd have to make 2 runs, and we would get paid $3,000 for it. So the car would eat up $2,000, and we would have $1,000 profit. That's not bad. And it didn't, like, win, lose, or draw. It didn't make any difference. She got paid, we got paid. We didn't stand an ice cube chance in hell. Unless she broke or she smoked the tires or something like that. She was winning. Nobody cared because we were there to put on a show. And that was the key to it. You go to put on a show. Right? Unfortunately, we were more focused on trying to be competitive. So in other words, we'd take the match race money and go try to run national events and then blow everything up. It was a bad scene. We would qualify occasionally, more than once. We qualified and we'd go around or so, but that was it. It was a dead end. And at the time, the corporates had really come in, the super bucks had really come in, and there was no place for regular guys like us anymore. So I moved on. But anyway, that's an example. It's my own personal experience of how you can make money, actually profit, by running a race car. But now I'll give you 2 examples of people who took that basic concept and ran it to the max and created legendary status for themselves. So one of them, a guy named Russell James Lieberman, Jungle Jim Lieberman. So Jungle Jim Lieberman, the name is synonymous with funny car racing back in the day. And when you hear the name, you automatically think, oh, this guy was the ultimate champion. This was the John Force of the early 1970s. But that wasn't the case. Jungle actually only ever won 1 national event in his entire career, an NHRA national event. He won smaller, like regional races and stuff like that, but only won 1 NHRA national event, the 1975 Summer Nationals at Englishtown. He had a second car back in 1969 that was driven by Claire Sanders that won the very first funny car eliminator at the '69 Winter Nationals. But that's a whole other story. But Jungle knew instinctively that he knew what the people wanted. They wanted the show, and he was a showman. The guy he just had that personality. He started out with his own car in California in like 1966, I believe it was. He had a car called Hercules. It was a Nova, an injected Nova on nitro. Then he drove for Lou Arrington, the Brutus car, for a year. And then in '67, he started with the whole Jungle Jim thing, because they were calling him Jungle Jim. The announcers used to just announce him as Jungle Jim driving the Brutus. And the name stuck because the guy was a showman. He did long burnouts. He'd back the car up at 75 miles an hour. He'd do U-turns in the middle of the track. The guy was like unpredictable, very flamboyant. He was born for show business, and he knew that that's what the people wanted. And so it didn't matter if he wasn't competitive. It didn't matter if he wasn't winning races. The fans knew when they saw that car in the pits that something exciting was going to happen. Whatever it happened to be, whether it was a wheelie or a crazy burnout or a U-turn, or we're driving the car through the pits up to the stage lanes, and he did all kinds of stuff like that. He always had multiple cars because, again, he was a showman, but he was a businessman. So it was a businessman first, and this is what a lot of people don't realize. The demand for match races back in during that period of time, let's say around 1970, 71, 72, the demand for match race appearances was huge. And you had 3 big markets. You had the West Coast, you had the Midwest, the Chicago area, and then you had the East Coast. And if you were going to be a real serious match racer, if you're going to treat this like a business, you needed more than 1 car. And so that's what he did. He always had 2 and 3 cars with 2 or 3 other drivers. Actually, he himself said on a couple occasions he didn't want to drive cars. He actually wanted to be an engine builder, but the money was in funny car racing, putting on a funny car show. He had the whole Jungle Pam thing, which, I mean, if you were an adolescent, you were a young guy in the 1970s, it was like you've got images of Jungle Pam just seared into your brain. And she was a real sweetheart. I got to know her much later on. And she's a very nice person. But that's besides the point. She was part of the show, and she put on the show. It was all a show. And the guy made money, lots of it. It was a successful business endeavor because he knew he was racing, he knew he had to put on representative performances, but he didn't go all out. Everything wasn't set on kill, everything was set on entertain, and he made money. Unfortunately, he was killed in a car crash. He moved from California to Pennsylvania, Chester, Pennsylvania. I guess it was around 1971 or so, because most of the match race action was in that area. And he had a shop off of Route 22. And he got killed one night in a streetcar, ran it into the front of a bus, and that was the end of that. But there was an example of somebody who only won one national event, but owned funny car racing. And like I said, you go back, you know, when I was coming up in that whole deal, it was several years after he died. He died in 1977. I didn't really get involved until 1985 or so, 1986, when I started helping out and trying to climb the ladder. And at that point, you know, eight or 10 years after his death, he was still spoken of like with reverence. You talk to anybody who was running cars in that area at that time, other racers, and nobody had anything but the utmost respect. You know, Jungle did this, Jungle did that. Jungle sat in that chair. You know, Jungle took my beer out of this fridge. Okay, and it was like the guy was legendary, even among his peers, and it all came from that flamboyance, that show business. Now here's an example of somebody who does it today, and it's very similar. It's completely different, but it's very similar. Farmtruck. Farmtruck in Asian. Farmtruck is a very unique situation. So when Discovery started the Street Outlaw series, the cars that they were featuring were the cars that they were running in the 405. They had their list races, and it was a club racing scene, right? And Farmtruck was there in the thick of things with the Farmtruck. It was a standout in that it was a sleeper. It was different. It was way out of the box, but it was still one of the competitive cars in that clique. But that only lasted for like one season, maybe 2 seasons. The serious players in that series started to graduate to real race cars. I mean, real race cars. And the Farmtruck became outclassed. Now, rather than trying to keep up with the Joneses, Farmtruck was smart, right? He used his brain. He was like, people love my truck. People love the whole idea of this insanely fast, beat up red pickup truck that hikes to left front and just storms, right? I'm going to stick with that. So he became a secondary player in the show. So in other words, like, instead of being actually competitive racing with these guys, like I said, they had all moved on performance-wise beyond what his truck was capable of, but it didn't matter. He had the personality. Him and Asian, you know, the two of them teamed up, they paired up. So he would host races, he would announce races, he would do all sorts of things to be involved in the periphery and still run his own truck and come up with these other creations, these other types of cars or trucks and variations on the Farmtruck theme. And that team, Farmtruck and Asian, to this day are still capitalizing on that, because they realize that there's a business beyond just the racing. There's show business, and the people want to see things that are interesting, that are entertaining, that are fun, things that they can relate to, people that they can relate to, and there's money to be made there. Yeah, there are definitely exceptions to the rule. Not everybody can pull that off. The same situation with Jungle Jim and Farmtruck. These are people who are in the right place at the right time with the right type of car and the right idea. So all of their stars aligned, and they ran with it. But that doesn't mean that it's exclusive, because that type of opportunity comes up all the time. It's just not everybody is prepared to take that type of opportunity, and not everybody is prepared to step out of the box like that. When you're involved in racing, any type of racing, but drag racing, because that's what we're talking about, it's total tunnel vision. You can't think of anything but how to make your car quicker, how to make yourself quicker, how to make your team more efficient, how to make, how am I organizing the tools so that in between rounds I could do this, that, and the other thing? How am I setting up the car so I could do, and it's an ongoing thing. You live, breathe, eat, sleep, drink, everything drag racing. And so it just becomes this total tunnel vision, and you miss out on those potential opportunities. They say, I'm just going to look a little bit out of the box. Just like, here's another example, Bill Golden, Maverick Golden with the Little Red Wagon. He was a failed superstock racer, and the Little Red Wagon was a failed Chrysler experiment. Because that was originally supposed to be a match race car. It was supposed to be a factory experimental type of car, the truck. But it didn't work out. They couldn't keep the front end down. So, preparation, they had the parts, they had the car, they had the people, they had the manpower, meets opportunity. Hey, this thing just stands up on ends, and people want to watch this thing go down the track. And Bill Golden he bought the car from Chrysler, and he ended up turning it into a very lucrative thing that lasted right up to his death. So there are opportunities out there. It's like if you look at it, you say, oh, I want to make money from racing, I want to be involved in racing. And you say, well, gee, I can't afford, the money that's involved in it these days it's obscene. It really is. It's obscene. And you look at what these people are doing at the top levels, and you say, well, how can I possibly ever compete with that? You probably can't. You probably can't, unless you were born, with money, okay, with lots and lots and lots of money. You can't compete with that. Somebody will always outspend you. But that doesn't mean that you can't be out there and having your time and your efforts and your energies rewarded with income, because it is done all the time. You just need to think out of the box. All right, I'm going to take some aspirin and go lay down, and tomorrow I will be able to bend over the fender with this thing, and we'll be able to do that. So I hope you got something out of that. I'll see you tomorrow.